Ms. Burton?
Thank you. Mr. Wong, do you prefer to be sworn or to affirm?
Sworn, please.
Okay, I don't know whether we have a whole, yes, we do have a book there where you are. In your right hand, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so
Ms. Ogden-Mifflin?
yeah, just before we start with the region's first witness, I've handed to you a copy of Mr. Wong's witness statement as originally filed, a copy of his reply witness statement as originally filed. So we could mark the witness statement as, I think we're at 47 now.
47.
Yes.
Yep. And the reply witness statement can be 48.
Why don't we do 47A and B?
Okay, that works.
That makes sense.
I've also handed up the redacted witness statement. So that'll be 48A.
48?
And then the redacted reply can be 48B.
Okay.
And one last housekeeping matter. You'll see from the witness statement at tab 1 that Mr. Wong's CD is appended. There was an error noted after that was filed, and I've circulated an updated CV to my friends. Sorry, I know there's an echo. And so I just want to hand that up, and Mr. Wong, in going through his CV, will identify what that error is.
Okay.
So this is Mr. Wong's CV. Is this 48, Mr. Kagan? I'm in your hands here. Or is it 49?
Sorry, I have to take a moment to come off mute, Ms. Burton. So I've made the redacted witness statement 48A, and if there's a redacted reply witness statement, it's 48B. Abola, I can't remember whether there was a redacted reply.
Yes, there was.
That's it.
So that can be 48B.
Right.
And the updated CD, I guess, can be 49 then.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, so I think you should have everything in front of you. Good afternoon, Mr. Wong. Get started. So right off the bat, I just want you to take the tribunal through your an overview of your qualifications and your work experience, and you could alert their attention to the error that I had identified earlier.
So I started working with Lee Consulting in 2011, and I worked there until 2015, at which time I resigned and started working at the Regional Municipality of York. That was the error. It showed that I was working until 2018. So it should be 2011 to 2015. And from 2015 to 2018, I worked as a transportation planner for the region of York. And from 2018 to present, I switched roles to senior transportation planner.
Sorry, getting off mute here. And could you provide the tribunal with an overview of your roles and responsibilities in your capacity as senior transportation planner?
As a senior transportation planner, I am involved with, as a commenting agency, transportation planning issues related to official plan amendments, subdivision applications, site plan applications, secondary plans, and other tasks required for transportation policy related inquiries on behalf of the region.
Thank you. And I can see from your CV that you are a registered professional planner.
Yes, I am.
And could you just provide us with a brief overview of your education prior to you beginning work as a transportation planner?
I attended the University of Waterloo and acquired a Bachelor of of environmental studies in urban planning.
Thank you. I'm looking to qualify Mr. Wong as a transportation planning expert evidence, subject to any questions from my friends or the tribunal.
Any issues or questions of the qualifications of the witness? By anyone? Silence means no. My colleague said it. Oh,
Okay, thank you. So could we start then by providing a description of the region's role in respect of the secondary plan as it relates to the area of transportation planning?
So as an upper tier municipality, the region was circulated to comment on the secondary plan. Transportation planning was also circulated within that circulation to comment on the official plan amendment, the secondary plan policies, and also the transportation study. The official plan was exempted from regional approval, but transportation planning continued to work with the city and HER on the parameters to conduct the transportation study for the KDA. At a high level, the region reviewed the BA secondary plan transportation considerations report, June 2017. The Yonge and Bernard KDA secondary plan, October 2017. The peer review and draft HDR transportation report, and also the final transportation report produced by HDR. We reviewed the proposed secondary plan and also the transportation impact study prepared by Lee Consulting for North Elgin Center, June 2020. We did not review the zoning bylaw.
And just a question on review of the final transportation report by HDR. What was the region's role in reviewing that report?
We reviewed the infrastructure assumptions as relates to the region. We also reviewed the horizon years, the methodology, and generally the inputs. We relied on HDR to conduct a technical analysis.
Thank you. So you've provided us with an overview of the region's involvement generally in terms of the secondary plan. Could you provide us with your personal involvement in reviewing the secondary plan and its various iterations up until where we are now?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
I said you provided us with a general overview of the region's involvement in the secondary plan, and I'm just asking now if you could give the tribunal a description of your involvement as it relates to reviewing the secondary plan and its various iterations.
So I was involved with reviewing and providing feedback on the 3 iterations of the updated transportation assessment prepared by HDR. I reviewed the Yonge Bernard secondary plan, and I also attended technical advisory meetings and 2 public information centers. I reviewed the region's infrastructure assumptions were reasonable and appropriate, and I also visited the site on various occasions.
Thank you. So could you provide the tribunal with an overview in terms of the specific transportation policies in the secondary plan that the region had an involvement in?
As part of the specifics, we did provide comments on 12.4.F and G that can be found on tab 32, paginated page 2490.
You're referring to the joint document book?
Yes.
Okay.
We also ensured that the policies were consistent with regional policies, such as policy 7.2.53, which can be found on the joint document book tab 6, paginated page 488. Essentially indicating that it's imperative that public local streets maintain and support the regional efficiency of the regional transportation network. Specifically, if you wanted to review the comments that we provided, you can find that on tab 41 of the joint document book, paginated page 3125.
And could you please provide the tribunal with your opinion on whether or not the comments that you've referenced just now were addressed through the proposed modifications to the secondary plan as endorsed by council on May 14th, 2020?
I can confirm that all of our comments were addressed.
Okay, and in terms of regional official plan policies and your review of the secondary plan, are there any other policies that you'd like to highlight for the tribunal in respect of your review of the secondary plan?
Yes, I'd like to confirm that the secondary plan confirms to policies 5.4.6b that can be found on document book tab 6, paginated page 469, which basically states that the establishment and implementation of a continuation fine-grained road network, which incorporates sidewalks and bicycle lanes. I can also confirm that the policy is conform to 5.4.6f, which speaks to sequencing development in an orderly fashion.
So could you then provide your general opinion on the secondary plan as it relates to the regional official plan policies that you've identified for the tribunal today?
It's my expert opinion that the policies in the secondary plan conforms to all the policies I identified in the regional official plan.
Thank you. Now, in preparation for providing evidence to the tribunal today, did you have the opportunity to review the witness statements filed by the other parties and hear the evidence of other witnesses?
Yes, I did. I've gone through the city transportation witnesses, Nixon Chans, who is expert witness on behalf of NEC, Sharon Sterling, who is an expert witness on behalf of TSMJC, and Adrian Kwan, expert witness for YRT at the region. I've also had the opportunity to listen to the city witnesses through YouTube.
And did you specifically have the opportunity to hear the evidence of the transportation panel? That's Dan Terziewski and Mr. Carl Wong.
Yes, I have.
And you previously indicated that as part of your review of the regional, of the secondary plan, you reviewed the work and reports by HGR, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So what is your overall opinion on the testimony provided by the city's transportation panel?
Sorry, I agree with the testimonies that were provided.
Okay, so I'm going to take you now to the issues addressed through your witness statement. Are you aware of this tribunal's direction with respect to what issues are to be dealt with in phase 1?
Yes, I confirm my understanding is that phase 1 is dealing with area-wide policies and quadrant-specific policies and issues are deferred to phase 2.
So then with that in mind, we'll address issues 62, parts of 78 and 82 on the revised issues list, which broadly we can categorize as the public ring road system issues.
It's my opinion that the public road network is required to support the intensification of the Yonge Bernard KDA, that the ring road provides continuous public road system without potential closure or interruption from any private developments, that the public road system provides consistency in design, maintenance standards while accommodating a wide range of vehicles, active transportation facilities such as sidewalks and cycling lanes. The public road will also facilitate and accommodate all private development accesses and provide opportunities.
I'm sorry, sir. Could you speak just a little more slowly?
Sorry about that. It's also my opinion that the public it's also my opinion that the public road will also facilitate and accommodate all private developments, accesses, and provide opportunities to consolidate accesses and minimize interruption to Yonge Street, which is the only north-south arterial road servicing the KDA. And this provision is in conformity with policy 7.2.53, which I've previously stated.
And sorry, 7.2.53 of which official plan?
Of the York Region official plan. Furthermore, with a public road system, the public agency will not be required to request permission or permits from private landowners to use or access the road. For example, in the case of an emergency for construction-related utilities, such as servicing a sinkhole that requires the closure of Yonge Street, the public agency can use the public roads as emergency detours and can modify the configuration of these public roads as required. In terms of east-west connectivity, Bernard Avenue and Canyon Hill is the only east-west public road that connects directly from the east side of Yonge Street to the west side of Yonge Street within the limits of the KDA. That the proposed ring road is needed to provide additional east-west connectivity.
I just ask a question? You said east-west connectivity. Does it involve north-south connectivity?
Yes, it does. It facilitates, the ring road facilitates both north-south and east-west connectivity. I agree with the findings of the HDR study, which demonstrates that the public ring road will provide additional east-west required to connect the east side with the west side for all modes of transportation. That supports pedestrian and cycling connections to other destinations other than the Bernard bus terminal, such as the grocery store, parks, and schools on the east side of Yonge Street. In conclusion, to accommodate the full build-out of the Yonge Bernard KDA, it's my professional opinion that the proposed ring road system is required in its entirety to create a fine grid road network that allows the city and the region to accommodate mobility for various modes, and which will provide alternative additional routing options to residents and patrons, which enables us to implement good transportation planning.
Thank you. I had asked you to confirm earlier that you were aware that the tribunal had made specific findings with respect to what's phase 1 and what's a phase 2 issue. Specifically the quadrant ones, but I want to ask you in general if I can take you to tab 68 of the joint document book. And I can share my screen or you can share yours.
You can share.
What's that? I can share?
Yep.
Hopefully everyone can see that. I'll give you a minute to get acquainted with that. I'm looking at paginated page 4140. And I want to ask you a question, generally talking about signalizing intersections along Yonge Street, specifically within the KDA. In general, what is the impact of the existence of the BRT along Yonge Street to signalizing an intersection in the KDA?
It's my opinion that the existence of the BRT is an additional consideration. At the end of the day, when the region installs a signal, we are balancing the needs of the context. And in this context, the fact that the BRT is present and constructed does not preclude the region's ability to, in the future, install a signal when warranted and when the needs can be balanced.
So in your opinion, then, is this comment letter from the region at tab 68 consistent with what you've just told the tribunal?
Yes, it is. My interpretation of this email is indicating that in the short term, and with the construction of the BRT as today, does not include a signal, nor is it warranted today with the context of the area. However, the email does further go on to say that in the future, that the region will work with the town, the city now, to reevaluate at the time that's needed a signal. And I think that that's gonna depend on when it's warranted and through a detailed design process to determine how the design can be provided and how that intersection can be designed to balance needs.
Thank you. And in your opinion, do you have any opinion as to the timing of when that warranted signal might be required or might be warranted, sorry?
No, we do not have any forecasted timing on when it would be warranted. It would be development driven. It would depend on when development comes in, connecting everything in terms of the ring road. The warrant the signal may be warranted earlier if the ring road is completed in its entirety so that residents and patrons in the area could travel using the ring road to where the signal is contemplated.
Thank you. So I want to move away then from that subject area into issue 44 on the revised issues list. I believe it's identified as TSMJC's issue 3, and it deals with the capital projects and the modal splits. So in your testimony earlier, you mentioned that the region reviewed the secondary plan and the transportation report at a high level to confirm the region's infrastructure assumptions were reasonable. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And if I take you to tab 32 of the joint document book, paginated page 2501. Would those assumptions have included the capital projects identified in that table there?
Yes, looking at that list of projects, the 10-year capital project includes all of those with the exception of G.
And I believe this came up during the examination of Dan Terziavsky, but could you explain to the tribunal the purpose and function of the region's 10-year capital plan?
Sure, the 10-year capital plan lists is a list of projects that is endorsed by regional council. The projects are approved on an annual basis. And in addition, the council approves CSA, which stands for Capital Spending Authority, which allows staff to enter into multi-year contracts for larger projects that may require more than 1 year to complete.
Thank you. And the region also has a transportation master plan, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So could you explain to us the relationship between the transportation master plan and the 10-year capital plan?
So the TMP, the Transportation Master Plan for York Region, identifies and recommends in an ideal situation where the region has no financial constraints, projects to consider. Whereas the 10-year capital plan takes into account the region's business processes to identify the projects that need to be slated within the 10-year and budgeted.
Sorry. Could you then provide us with an overview of the consultation between the region and the city in respect of the capital projects, specifically dealing with the issues that TSMJC has raised about the appropriateness of the assumptions?
Certainly. So the region has met with the city and HDR to discuss which projects were identified in the 10-year construction program, as well as other improvements. And I can confirm that the assumptions that are included in the HDR report are reasonable and appropriate. And I can also confirm that the modal split assumptions used in the HDR technical review are consistent with modal split targets identified in the York Region official plan, policy 7.2.26, which can be found on tab 6 of the joint document book, paginated page 485.
Thank you. And I believe you indicated that you did hear the evidence of Dan Terzewski and Ms. Dana Anderson with respect to the evidence provided on behalf of the city. I want to ask you specifically if you were able to listen to their testimony on the proposed settlement with TSMJC related to the modal splits and the assumptions.
Yes, I was.
And if I can share my screen, I'll just pull up Exhibit 35 for everyone's reference. And so for the tribunal's recollection, this is the proposed modifications based on a settlement and discussions between TSMJC and the city as it relates specifically to the holding provisions and the assumptions about the capital projects. So can I ask you your opinion of the proposed policy modifications as identified in Exhibit 35?
So yes, I have reviewed it, and I'm aware that the city is currently undertaking a stratification study. I'm aware that the settlement anticipates stratification policies in the KDA and that it's subject to council approval. It's my professional opinion that stratification may be considered, provided that the road still meets the requirements of a public road and protects for the protection of public utilities if required. I'm also aware that the settlement recognizes that the roads shown conceptually and that minor adjustments to the location shown on Schedule 4 of the secondary plan will not require amendment to the secondary plan, as long as it continues the intent of the secondary plan. I'm also aware that the modifications to the table in the holding bylaw and also the clarification on modal split calculation methodologies, I can confirm that in the region's perspective, these are all acceptable.
Thank you. So could you provide then your overall opinion on the proposed principles of settlement?
Certainly. It's my opinion that the proposed principles of settlement satisfy and maintain the general intent of a public road network. It is my opinion that the settlement appears to allow the city the ability to operate, service, and maintain and replace infrastructure to ensure that a stratified public street or streets with public easements maintain the intent of a public fine-grained road network. And as such, it is my opinion that the region would have no concerns with the settlement.
Thank you, Mr. Wong. So then finally, if I can ask you to provide the tribunal with your concluding opinions about the evidence you provided today and the secondary plan.
Certainly, it's my conclusion and opinion that from a regional perspective, that the KDA secondary plan with the proposed modifications represents good transportation planning as it protects for the proposed public ring road network. It facilitates the creation of a fine-grained road network that provides mobility options for pedestrians, cyclists, and vehicles, balancing the local needs of the KDA and integrates with the regional transportation system. It utilizes the opportunities of the BRT system to achieve York Region's modal split targets and has regard to maximizing the efficiency of the regional road network with the direction to minimize accesses to Yonge Street. It conforms to transportation planning policies in the York Regional Official Plan. And as such, it is my recommendation that the tribunal should approve the transportation matters as proposed in the updated secondary plan.
Thank you. Those are my questions for this witness.
That's one question.
Two questions.
Sorry, Mr. Wong, could I just ask a clarifying question? You mentioned earlier when you were talking about the signal, 165 north of Bernard, but you said it's not warranted yet, but it may be in the future, and could be completed earlier if the ring road is completed and used. How would you evaluate whether it was warranted? A traffic count at that stage? What factors would go into that decision?
So it certainly would be a combination of traffic counts. It would be dependent on, I guess, how much traffic is traveling on segments of the public road that are already constructed. And it would depend on how much development has proceeded within the KDA. So we would be evaluating on-site traffic behaviors or forecasted based on development proposals.
Mr. Chair, no cross from the city.
I didn't expect cross,
Yeah.
but
Or further examination.
okay.
Yeah.
And in the other room, anyone, any counsel? Any questions?
Yes, but I think I would go after the city.
Who's that?
Mr. Cherniak.
Oh, yeah, of course you would. I was thinking of like interests. Oh, Mr.
Harrington's
Harrington.
hand is up.
Okay. You're currently muted, Mr. Harrington. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Just a couple of questions of clarification for the witness. Mr. Wong, what is your understanding of the status of the segment of the ring road that's on my client's lands, which is the Yonge MCD lands in the northwest quadrant?
My understanding is that a major component of it has been approved through the townhouse development, and that is under construction. But the link that connects to Yonge Street will be pursued at a later time.
And in terms of that link to Yonge Street, what has currently been approved in terms of how that section of the ring road is to intersect with Yonge Street?
Currently, there is a driveway with a signal there that operates and services the grocery store.
And with respect to access to the Yonge MCD lands, what is the requirement in terms of access onto Yonge Street from the Yonge MCD lands for now?
For now, their main connection is through the Canyon Avenue Bernard Road, East-West Road, public road.
To the extent that it is suggested that this ring road network should terminate at Yonge Street and not go across the quadrant to the northeast section? What would your opinion be on that proposition?
My opinion would be that it shouldn't occur, and that it's required to facilitate the full build out of the Yonge and Bernard KDA.
And that's your opinion with or without the signal? As you had indicated earlier, you were, in response to the chair's questions, you're going to be evaluating traffic counts, development levels, on-site and projected traffic behavior. But with or without the signal, what is your opinion about the continuation of the ring road across Yonge Street?
My opinion is that it regardless of whether or not that signal is implemented, that ring road system needs to be in place.
Thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Anyone else that would like to? Question of clarification? Mr. Cherniak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wong, would it be fair to say that you are relying on the HDR transportation report for your opinions on the secondary plan?
In a sense of the technical analysis, yes, that is true.
So based on that report, would you agree that the proposed secondary plan will eventually require this intersection that we've been talking about at the north edge of the NEC lands to be signalized?
Based on the assumptions of the HDR report, I do agree.
And this would be contrary to the region's guidelines, right?
Can you elaborate on which guidelines you were referring to?
Well, my understanding is that the regional guidelines on traffic signals, I think, is that this one is too close to the signal at Yonge and Bernard. I don't know if there were other reasons why it would not comply. Is that your understanding?
I can confirm that the proposed signal spacing isn't ideal as per the York Region guidelines. However, what I can say is that, again, we are looking to balance different competing interests. And given the creek and the crossing, that this is the maximum spacing that we were able to achieve. And given the secondary plan policies and the density and the need for the public ring road, that this is the best location that we have to work with.
So my understanding of the process is that at some point when somebody decides that this signalization is necessary, there's going to be more studies and a final decision is going to be made. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and there's a possibility at that time that even though the traffic might warrant a signal here for all the reasons that we've heard, the region might decide it opposes the signal because of its other guidelines. Am I right?
I think that it will come down to, again, prioritizing the needs. And I think that the guidelines are, as it states, a guideline, and it works into the decision making process, but it is not the one and only determining factor that will determine whether or not we will or won't permit a signal to be installed there.
Would you agree with me that there is a possibility that the region will not permit a signal when the time eventually comes for that?
Yes, there's a possibility that the region may not approve it for unknown reasons.
Okay, and I mean, if that happens, I suppose what I want to understand is that you have these guidelines for a reason, and presumably the guidelines would have something to do with that refusal in the future. What sorts of problems would be posed by this intersection not being signalized as HDR recommends?
I think the limitations of not providing a signal would definitely be reducing the ability for all modes to cross Yonge Street and providing that east-west connectivity. And as a result, it may create additional delays on upstream or downstream intersections, because again, this is working as a network.
So would it not be better from the point of view of this traffic signal to plan the secondary plan area so that that signalized intersection, which is against some of the region's guidelines, wouldn't it be necessary to plan the secondary plan area so that that signal is not necessary in the future?
No, I would disagree with that. I think that the secondary plan has done a very good job in allowing the flexibility to address issues as it arises. And should that, when that is warranted, I definitely think that it can be implemented safely. And we have mechanisms to offset the balance of the non-ideal intersection spacing, such as reducing certain movements at that intersection.
But these guidelines exist for a reason, right?
I think these guidelines exist to inform the development community and as well as provide a process for the region to evaluate new signals. But it is not the only criteria for the region to permit signals.
How common is it to allow traffic signals that do not comply with the spacing guideline, as in this case?
I think that I've definitely seen applications where they don't comply with all the criterias, and it's a context-specific solution.
So it's not very common, right?
I would say it's not. I wouldn't say it's not common, but I wouldn't say it's common. This is definitely not the only instance where a signal that doesn't meet all criteria is being considered.
Right, and you mentioned you've seen other applications. Have any of them been approved?
Yes.
How many in the last 5 years?
I would probably say, to my mind, maybe 3 or 4 that I can think of. That may not seem ideal from a idealistic perspective, but has been designed and worked.
So
Is
that
that
doesn't
distance,
sound...
excuse me, Mr. Turnick, is that distance alone you're speaking of?
Yes.
So I think 2 or 3 examples in 5 years is not particularly common. Would you still say it's not common?
Sorry, I'm not sure.
Well, you said it's not common, but you also wouldn't say it's not common. So how, I mean, 2 or 3 in 5 years to me sounds like it's not something that's very common.
To me, I think that it really depends, because within 2 to 5 years, depending on the demand of development applications, we could get 5 new intersections a year, or we could get 2.
Okay, and when you have signals that are too close together, you talked about flow on the street, but it also is a safety issue, right? Cars start going through the intersection, getting stuck in the middle, that sort of thing, right?
I think that's related to what you kind of highlighted with flow.
But is it also not safety when pedestrians are trying to cross the road and cars are stuck in the middle of an intersection trying to get out of it?
And I think that specific concern can be addressed through simply restricting certain movements. So my experience is that typically the movements that would result in such a situation would be the left turn movements. And in this specific instance, the goal, I would say, or the priority is to provide that ring road east-west connectivity. And it's not to relieve Yonge Street. So by restricting the northbound left turn at this signal or southbound left turn, I think that that's a very feasible option to basically reduce the likelihood that spillback would occur through intersections.
But the left turn off of Yonge is not related to the Yonge and Bernard intersection up ahead. The problem with the Yonge and Bernard intersection up ahead being too close is that people might be stuck at a red light up ahead, and then it's a green light behind at this proposed new intersection, and then the cars move and they get stuck, right? Isn't that the real issue? It's not about left turns.
I think that the issue that you're speaking to can be mitigated through technologies such as signal coordination, and with the, which is basically timing the green lights at the various intersections along Yonge Street to work with the amount of cars that are anticipated to stop, so that the situation where a car blocking an intersection can be mitigated.
So mitigation is possible, and that's something to be worked out in the future, assuming that the region approves this light, right?
Yes, that would be the mitigation measures, and considering all the various challenges is going to be gone through and done through the detailed design.
And wouldn't it be better to plan a road system that doesn't require all these mitigation measures in the first place?
No, I don't agree.
You don't think it would be better?
No.
I'm not saying ideal or preferred, I'm saying better.
No, I don't think so. Not within the context of the secondary plan, KDA. My opinion is that the ring road network and the proposed signal, when warranted, represents good transportation planning in the perspective of the secondary plan KDA.
So you're here as a transportation planner. I presume you're not giving opinions on what sort of density there should be or how many people should live in the area. So from a purely transportation planning point of view, wouldn't your preference be a road network that follows regional guidelines and doesn't require mitigation measures to make it safe for people because those guidelines haven't been followed?
Sorry, can you repeat that, please?
Well, I understand what you're saying. If this secondary plan is going to go ahead, you think that what's been proposed will work. I understand that's the opinion you've given. It's the opinion of the region, right?
Yes.
Okay, but you know, if you start without saying, I know what has been proposed in the secondary plan, and just say, I'm trying to, but before the secondary plan, before the final version is before you, what would you want to see? You would want to see something that follows regional guidelines, wouldn't you?
I think in an ideal situation, yes.
Okay. And the only reason that they cannot be followed in this case is because of the proposed densities in the area, right?
No, that's incorrect. It's because of the creek. It's in our inability to move the creek crossing.
Right, and you could choose to lower the densities and then you don't need the intersection in this location we're talking about, right?
I would disagree.
You say it's impossible to lower the densities?
I'm saying that regardless of lowering the densities, that it would be good transportation practice to develop this KDA with a ring road. And that regardless of the density, that ring road would result in an east-west crossing at the current location proposed due to the location of the creek.
I don't know if this follows from what you said, but is it your opinion that the ring road would be good from a transportation planning point of view, even if development does not go ahead? Is that what you're saying?
When you say development to go ahead, do you mean as it stands today?
Yeah, are you saying today that this ring road would be a good thing to have?
No, I'm saying that the ring road would be a good thing to have with the redevelopment of the KDA.
Okay. wanted to talk to you about the grade separation on Elgin Mills. So this is over the railroad or under the railroad, right? That is part of the 10-year capital plan. Is it fully funded yet?
So the Elgin Mills crossing is identified, I believe, for the horizon year 2026.
Right.
So because the capital plan is reevaluated annually, I guess the funding would be approved the year before, but we do have the 10-year capital plan, which outlines all the projects that are planned to be funded for within the 10 years.
How long will construction take for this project?
I don't know.
Okay. And are funds not required, I think it's from CN, before this can be built?
I'm not aware of the funding obligations from the various parties involved.
So you actually don't know whether the funding is available at this point, even beyond the region?
No, I'm not sure.
Okay. And as far as the region's funds are concerned, are you involved in preparing, because you said the 10-year capital plan is funded every year, are you involved in that funding for the upcoming year?
Do you mean me personally working on which projects are recommended?
Yes, or are you aware of what is being proposed?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question, please?
So I'll start with the way you put it. Are you involved in preparing the upcoming year's funding plan?
Me personally, I am not involved in, I am involved when they request development application statuses for within the vicinity of capital programs that are being considered. That is the extent of my involvement.
So do you know whether there's been any delay in regional projects because of COVID?
No, I'm not aware of any.
Okay. You noted in your evidence that HDR's proposed modal split is based on the region's official plan policy 7.2.26, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, I'm just going to go to that for a moment. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see it. I'll just move it to the top of the screen. So that's this part here, right?
Sorry, I don't.
Do you see 7.2.26 or did I share the wrong thing?
Not yet, nothing.
Oh, sorry. My computer says that I am sharing it. Does no one see it?
Or
Yes.
You are now, yes.
Oh, okay, sorry. So it's this one here, 7.2.26, right?
Yes.
Okay, and this is a target. It's not a policy that says a transportation study should assume this. It's a target to be reached, right?
Yes.
Okay. And obviously there's no guarantee that we're going to reach that target, right?
No. Yes, I agree.
Okay. And would you agree with me that transportation studies are supposed to base their opinions on what they expect and not just assume the regional targets?
My opinion is that it depends on the context of the study. So in the perspective of the KDA secondary plan, which is a very, it's a document intended to facilitate the long range full build out of the KDA, that this is appropriate.
Sorry, it's appropriate to assume the modal split or not?
It is.
It is, so HDR should just assume that this will be the modal split. That's your opinion?
For their full build out.
Okay. Are you aware that BA Group's study in 2017 did not include this particular modal split?
No, I'm not.
Well, if I'm right about that, are you suggesting that they did something wrong by not assuming this modal split?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay. So it would not be appropriate to assume the modal split then? Or it's not required to assume the modal split?
You're asking me if it's not required for the BA study to assume the modal split.
Well,
30.
honestly, you surprised me in your answer about HDR. You said you thought HDR should assume this target modal split in its study. And I was surprised that that was your answer. So is that still your answer?
No, I think you asked me, am I aware that they did not assume?
That was BA Group in 2017. So there's two transportation studies, right?
Yes,
Have you reviewed the BA Group study from 2017?
yes.
Okay. The only point I wanted to get through, and I think you would agree with me, that HDR should be not just assuming this target modal split, but they should be providing reasons to prove that this is reasonable to expect in 2031, right?
Sorry, can you give me 1 second just to open up the... Sorry, could you repeat the question?
So I'm asking you whether BA Group in its report should, or in anyone that was preparing a report for this secondary plan, any transportation study, should there be an assumption of the region's target modal split being met in 2031?
I think that that depends on the consultation that they had at the time. And I wasn't involved with the consultation on the development of the BA transportation study from 2017.
If HDR's study had said that the modal split was not going to be met, would your view for the region have been that they had done something wrong?
No, I think it would be within trying to understand the context of how they came to that determination.
I just want you to agree with me, and I think you do agree with me, that even though BA Group does not use the same modal split target, the BA Group study is still valid and worth considering here, right?
I disagree with that. I think that the HDR report has reevaluated the situation to take the BA Group study one step further to evaluate not just the 2031 horizon, but also the 2041 horizon, and also provide scenarios where different density targets can, given modal split targets and what is met at the time, different densities that the KDA can achieve. So I don't think that the BA study is still relevant.
So BA Group considered different densities than HDR. So I understand that to that extent, BA group study is not relevant for the different densities, right?
Yes.
Is that the point you're trying to make?
No, I'm saying that the HDR study has been updated and to account for a number of different things, and as such, the BA study is no longer relevant.
Other than different densities, what are the updates for the HDR study?
The HDR study included a larger study area. It also included the 2041 horizon. It has updated the 10-year capital plan improvements and assumptions.
It updated the 10-year capital plan improvements, are you sure?
It confirmed the updated 10-year capital plan improvements.
Okay, so from 2017 to 2020, HDR group changed some underlying assumptions and then they prepared a new report. And as a result, you would just throw out the previous report based on the change in assumptions.
Yes. I think that they can be referred to for context, but I think that they're no longer relevant.
Because the assumptions have changed.
Yes.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
I was on mute. Mr. Askander, is there any questions of this particular witness that he's able to answer in transportation planning?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Streisfeld.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, I believe you indicated that you had worked at Lee Consulting before you joined the region.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Okay. And I believe you also said that regional transportation staff reviewed the HDR report and agreed with the report in all respects. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. And am I correct, and just on this business of the signal again, tell me if I got this right. HDR projected all of the density going forward in their transportation model. And they came to the conclusion, and here's the important part, that a signal was not warranted at full build out, meaning 4.0 FSI. It did not meet the region's warrant criteria for putting in a signal. So
Mr. Chair, that's not HDR's evidence or what is indicated in the report. So if you're going to make that assertion to the witness, then I think you have to say assume that's true.
So I assume you then have a copy of HDR's report handy. And if you could turn it up and take yourself right to where they perform a signal warrant. And I just want to be clear on the first premise that the purpose of them doing a signal warrant was to determine if a signal was necessary for the full build out of the KDA at 4.0 FSI. That's the first thing. Do we have that right?
So I'm just going to share my, share my screen. Appendix 5. This is it. Are you asking me whether or not the signal was recommended?
No. This signal, what we're trying to understand here, at least I am, is whether or not this signal is required, needed for the full build out of this key development area at 4.0 FSI, which is the new density number that I think all the landowners have agreed to should be approved as part of the Part 1 mod.
Yes, I think it's required.
I'm sorry. You're saying yes, you think it's required from the HDR report, or yes, you're thinking it's required?
The HDR report recommended that it be signalized.
No. I understand that HDR wants to have a traffic signal there. Okay, that's not my question. My question is it your understanding, since you told us that you relied on their technical advice with respect to this potential traffic signal, is it your understanding that their analysis looked at the full build out and then did a warrant analysis based on the full build out at 4.0 FSI?
Let me see if I can find the appendix, because the appendix E. So if you look on the screen.
Okay, it's hard for me to see, but okay. Thank you.
The traffic warrant analysis will go through various criteria.
So slow down and just walk us through what you see on this document. We see some X's and see that? You see, you've got some X's in pink boxes.
So there's different criteria for the warrant analysis.
Correct.
And the warrant 1 shows that the projected volumes are satisfied.
And go on.
Warrant 2, speaking to delaying cross traffic, is not satisfied.
And 3, and the next one?
And warrant 4, the combination warrant is not satisfied.
Right. So notwithstanding that of the whatever criteria I'm assuming the region gave them, just by straight math, forgetting even of what any of this says, it only met it in one of the 3 circumstances by reference to this page. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I just want to be clear about that. So it only met it in one of the 3 circumstances. Okay. And if it only met it in one of the 3 circumstances, I just want to be clear. We're talking about full build at 4.0 FSI. You're looking forward and saying, if I allow 4.0 FSI and everybody builds to 4.0 FSI, I mean, as a KDA, under the 2 out of the 3 criteria that are listed on this, it even fails the warrant, correct?
I think that in a sense, based on the information that HDR has today
Yes.
and forecasting for 20 years out,
Yes.
which is probably not going to be the full build out, they've shown that it meets one warrant. And that alone, in my opinion, is enough that we should be protecting for it and not precluding it.
Okay.
And the other criterias will be, again, reevaluated at the time when development occurs. And without that information that we will collect in the future, maybe warrant 2 and warrant 4 are satisfied.
So what I'm saying here, sitting here today, if I read the HDR report and you tell me if you come to the same conclusion, I'm just telling you the way I read it. I read it that a signal installed there, a full signalized intersection, is not currently warranted for full build out, period, end of stop. That's the way I read it. Don't need it.
I read that it is warranted.
It is warranted. Okay. And so my next question to you is, I understand what you're saying. That's the way you read it. We'll have our transportation. By the way, you have reviewed Nixon Chan's discussion about this warrant. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
And can you just clarify for the tribunal what your understanding is of his assessment of this warrant business? He says it's not warranted.
He says it's not warranted. And I think that in our high-level review of his study, there are a number of shortfalls with the study that results in his study not evaluating apple to apple with the HDR report because it has a very reduced study area. It's not reviewing the traffic implications on his adjustments to the entire KDA, and instead only to the implications to the driveways to the northeast quadrant.
Okay. Let's move this. You were taken in your evidence in chief to Exhibit 1, tab 68, which was the regional memo saying it's currently not feasible, right?
Yeah.
And just to be
Yes.
clear, I just want to make sure that we have the same, just so we can cross-reference it. Can you open up Exhibit 33? Do you have the witness copy of North Elgin's document book up there? Well,
No.
there was a witness copy of, maybe it's sitting under there. Well, even if there isn't, you can just take my copy just for 1 second. I just want to make sure we're cross-referencing the right document. So you took us in your evidence in chief to Exhibit 1, tab, sorry, what's the number on there?
Tab 168.
68. You took us to Exhibit 1, tab 68. And I just want to cross-reference that with Exhibit 33, tab, what tab are we in there now? Let's go back one page. What tab is that?
This tab?
Yeah.
8.
So tab 7.
Tab 7.
So I just want to make sure that Exhibit 1, tab 58? 68 is the same as Exhibit 33, tab 7. No, tab 7. That's the same, is that not the same memo that you took us to?
Yes, I believe it is.
Okay, that's all I wanted to confirm. Okay, so just looking at that about the feasibility issue of it. I just want to understand, you've had this, the region's been involved in this secondary plan for how many years now? Well, it's got to be 3. Could be going on 4. Because it was originally adopted in 2017, so presumably they started the study before that. Is that?
I'm not sure. I was only involved in the current.
Okay. Okay. So I'm just saying on the assumption that the region's been involved since at least 2017, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Where do we see any of the region's analysis for traffic warrants for that signal? Did the region perform any traffic warrants?
No, we did not, because this is a secondary plan. The proposal for the ring road system came through the City of Richmond Hill secondary plan, and it was proposed to the region for consideration. The region is a commenting agency, and we didn't need to do the secondary plan.
Well, I'm a little bit struck by your last comment where you say that the region is a commenting agency. I thought the region was the original approval authority for the secondary plan, as opposed to a commenting agency. Am I wrong about that?
I think you heard him say in his evidence that this was exempted from regional approval.
I don't think he said anything
In
about
chief, he did. In chief, he did.
So let me just take a step back for a second. This exemption that you're talking about, that occurred back in 2017?
I'm not sure when the exemption letter was dated. I would have to defer that to planning.
Okay.
From the region.
So let's assume it was exempt back in 2017. Since we're using new terminology, I just want to make sure the tribunal understands what we're talking about here. This secondary plan by law is required to be provided after it's adopted to the region, because the region is the approval authority for the municipality's secondary plan, correct?
That's my understanding.
That's okay. And in this particular case, we have no regional council decision addressing this secondary plan or zoning bylaw, correct?
This is not an appropriate question for Mr. Wong. He's here to talk about transportation planning. You've indicated you're going to call Mr. Cole, and you can make those submissions and questions at that time.
I just want to get a process understood here, because he's the first regional witness, and apparently he had already spoken to an exemption. So I don't know why this would be contentious. I'm in your hands, Mr. Chairman.
We understand the process and what's happened. So ask him a question that he can answer.
The region did not perform or undertake any transportation study of its own. Isn't that correct?
To my knowledge, no, we haven't.
And I thought I heard you say, one, that the BA report is not relevant anymore.
Yes.
And that the only thing that is relevant, I guess, is the HDR report, correct?
Yes.
And as I understand it, because in your view, HDR had a broader study area, is that why it's relevant?
No, there's a number of reasons why it's relevant. One of the reasons is because it has a broader study area.
I see. Okay. Now, several times throughout your testimony, I believe you said that this ring road system is necessary, right?
Yes.
I'm going to put it to you. You can't have a ring road system, whether it's public and private, it doesn't matter. You just can't have a system unless you have a signal at that location. Isn't that correct? There's no system without the signal. Is that fair?
I don't agree with that.
So you can have a ring road system without a signal that connects one quadrant to another. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that a ring road system can be effective without a signal. It would be more effective with a signal.
Okay, fair enough. So tell me, how do you have a ring road system in this particular case if you don't have a signal crossing the BRT along the northern edge? How do you have that? How do you have a ring road system if you can't cross? How is there a system if there's no signal that allows you to cross Yonge Street? How is it a ring road system?
I still think that it is the ring road system works into the fine-grained road network. And regardless of whether or not at the northern extent there is a signal that facilitates the east-west, vehicles can still travel from the east quadrant to the west or vice versa using Yonge and Brookside. Or they could travel the other way, only using the ring road system.
Sorry, when you say the ring road system, what are we talking about here? Now, maybe I have to go pull up exhibit, was it 29? 1 second.
I can pull up the schedule.
I'll do better than that. I'm going to give you.
Can you see my screen?
I was going to try to use my screen. I can see your screen. And the question is, can you see my screen?
That the exhibit you want, Mr. Streisky?
Yes, I would like exhibit 29 because that's the only document that we know is somebody told us is supposedly a ring road. So this terminology of ring road, first of all, as part of the regional comments, can you confirm that at no point in time did the region ask the city to amend the secondary plan to include the term ring road? Can you confirm that?
Yes.
Right. And so ring road doesn't appear in the secondary plan.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, looking at exhibit 29, okay. You kept on saying the ring road, but if this signal doesn't exist, so that there's no connection across at this location, are you saying we still have a ring road?
Yes.
So if this is not here and you cannot cross, we still have a ring road system here. How is that possible? Isn't it a requirement?
Can you let him answer the question?
If you were on the northwest quadrant and you had to travel to the northeast quadrant, you could travel southbound to Canyon Hill Avenue, travel down through the Dogliola lands, through Yonge Street, up TSMJC, into the NEC lands, and vice versa. If you had to travel from the NEC lands to the Yonge MCD lands, you could also travel from the northeast quadrant south and all the way around. So in that sense, I think it is a ring road system. Now, if it has a signal, it would make that specific destination and origin more efficient. But I don't think that that signal is the only route or I don't think that signal is needed because it's the only route.
Okay, so let's be clear. There's no signal here, there's no connection. And so let's assume this wasn't even on the exhibit. Okay, let's assume it's not there. You can't cut across. And I'm saying just take that off. Make this assumption. And you're saying what's left is a ring road system? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I just want to go to, you referred to a couple of regional official plan policies. I believe that, was it 5.4.6 or 5.4.8 at consecutive page 470? Is that right? Can you just pull up a tab, I think it's tab 6.
Tab 6. Can you see my screen right now? Sorry.
I can't see your screen.
Okay.
Not yet.
Now I can.
And which policy did you want to bring me to?
I thought you took us, you were at page 460. So consecutive page 460. I've got consecutive page 467 and 470. So So at consecutive page 460, now,
469, right? 5.4.6.
yes, right. So you took us to 5.4.6, and this is mandatory, right?
Yes.
Right, mandatory because it says you got to prepare. And it says, and implemented in cooperation with the region. See that? 5.4.6.
Yes.
And then it tells you these secondary plans shall include, right?
Yes.
And I just want to be clear, you refer to what section here in your evidence? Was it
B
B?
and F.
B and F, right?
Yes.
Right. Now, I thought I had this right, that notwithstanding what B and F say, that when the city adopted its official plan, it by definition would have had to have conformed to the region's official plan. And that I thought we went to, and I took the planner to section 4.4.23 of the city's official plan, which is the KDA section, and you can read it if you want, but it says, it indicates that new local streets shall be provided where feasible. Okay?
Okay.
Now, I take it you haven't undertaken any analysis to determine whether any of the streets that you're talking about that are to traverse any lands in the east side of Yonge Street, whether any of those roads that you're talking about are feasible, right?
No.
Right, that's what I thought. So even though, according to the region's official plan document that you referred to us at 5.4.6, which talks about comprehensiveness and talks about in cooperation with the region, you haven't done your own study to determine traffic. You're relying on somebody else, correct?
My interpretation of where it
No, we're
speaks
just
to
my question is
To allow him to finish answering the
But no-
question. Just because you don't like the way he's answering it doesn't mean he doesn't get to answer it.
my interpretation of this policy is speaking to the region and the city cooperating. And I think that in our dealings, regardless of the fact that the official plan was exempted, I've mentioned again that transportation planning has been working with the city and HER in their transportation report. That I think that we met the intent of that as we are continuing to work with them. I don't think that the interpretation of this policy states that the region has to do their own independent study in order to cooperate with the city.
okay. I'll move on. Section 5.4.8, also in tab 6, and I believe that's at consecutive page 470. That's another requirement that speaks to secondary plans and zoning bylaw requirements from the region's perspective.
Yes.
Okay, just hold that for 1 second. And we're going to come back to that. And I thought I saw another section in the region's official plan. Just give me 1 second. 5.3.9 on consecutive page 467. We have 5.3.9 on consecutive page 467.
Yes.
So right there we have a requirement to manage parking consistent with regional policies. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That section applies to this proceeding?
I would defer to planning to
Okay, fair
comment on
enough.
that.
Fair enough. Now we're going to come back to that section 5.4.8. And this prescribes what the secondary plan and zoning bylaws have to include, right?
Yes.
So since you're the first regional witness up, I'm going to ask you the question. Obviously, you can defer to somebody else. It says here that secondary plans and zoning bylaws, both of which are before this tribunal for approval, is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Shall, so that's mandatory. Then it says in consultation with the region and related agencies. Now, to your knowledge, the important part is incorporate parking management policies and standards. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, did that relate to your job function on this matter as from the region? Because you're the only planner, transportation planner. So there's no other transportation planner that I know of that's coming from the region. There's a transit planner, there's a land use planner.
Part of my review did not include parking.
Part of your review did not include parking. Thank you. And I just want to be clear here that it's my understanding of policy 5.4.8, which is mandated by the region. Not only is it mandated, the region's supposed to be consulted. It says that you have to have policies and standards that include, now watch this, flip down to E. See E? It says preferential locations for carpooling and car sharing spaces. See that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to put it to you that nowhere in this secondary plan or zoning bylaw does it provide for car share parking spaces at all, let alone preferential locations for car space.
I'm going to object to that question. He's already indicated that it wasn't part of his review.
If it wasn't part of your review and the section requires, in order to comply with regional official plan, that the documents that are being proffered, being the secondary plan and zoning bylaw, it has to include these items. And if it doesn't include preferential locations for carpooling and car share parking spaces, just as then I would say to you, there's no way that this secondary plan or zoning bylaw could comply with this section of the region's official plan. What do you say?
Again, I'm going to object to that. Mr. Wong in his evidence noted the transportation policies that he reviewed as part of his scope and indicated that those applied and were conformity with the secondary plan. So if we need to leave that area alone.
No, so fair enough. He's the transportation person, and he's told us that as far as he's concerned, the region did not have any review in respect of these items. Do I have that right?
He said he did not.
Are you saying only you did not?
I'm saying that I did not.
Do you know if anybody else did?
I would need to just talk to my counterparts.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay. And I just want to be clear about this modal split business. You took us to 7.2.26. And so we're going to just flip in that same exhibit. By the way, did you review the wording of the secondary plan or the zoning bylaw for a transportation perspective to see if, in fact, the words on the page make sense to you from a transportation perspective?
I reviewed the secondary plan, but not the zoning bylaw.
Okay. So we're going to 7.2.26, and that's on page. That's on consecutive page 484?
485.
485, my apologies. Now, this section, first of all, is transit modal split a transportation matter? That falls within your area of expertise.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure we got the right person. And the reference to the 30%, and then there's a reference to a 50%. Do you see that?
Yes.
Does the reference to the 50% in that policy, doesn't that reference to 50% also apply to the Yonge Bernard KDA lands?
I don't know. I do not think it applies.
You don't think it applies?
The 50% applies to regional centers.
And corridors?
My interpretation is that the 50% applies to regional centers and corridors as they intersect, and that the 30% applies to corridors. And I guess in this case, a KDA.
Oh, okay. So then I was just wondering, exhibit 30, you have my exhibit 33. Yeah, I'll need it back for 1 second. I'll give it back to you. So I just wanted to go to the secondary plan. And I'm just using exhibit 33 tab 19, which is just my annotated version of the secondary plan. I thought there was a reference in this secondary plan. Just give me 1 second, I'll find it. To this 50%, not 30%. Yeah. I thought it said 50% in the secondary plan. Do you just know where that is? Thank you. Okay, while we wait for the 50%, I apologize for not having it tabbed. It's there somewhere. $12.4. Where is that? Oh, I'm not seeing it. So let me just ask you this. If there's a reference to this 50% modal split in this document, are you saying it's misplaced? It shouldn't be in there?
I'm going to object. I think you need to take him to where you're talking about before you ask such a broad question.
Okay, let's take a step back.
If I can share my screen, I just did a control search, so I don't know which section you're looking for. Just give me 1 second here. Sorry, my screen seems to be frozen. Let's try again.
You never.
Interesting method of cross-examination, but anyway.
I just want you to be fair to the witness. So I don't know what section you're referring to here, but
I thought there was a reference to 50% as a number shown up in this plan. I thought I had a tab and it's not there and it relates to the modal split. I just can't seem to put my finger on where that 50% number is. Where is it?
Might have been a typo.
It's a typo.
Yeah.
Okay, we got no.
Next question.
Okay, next time. Now, Mr. Cherniak asked you a question about the signal and not meeting the region's minimum signal spacing requirements, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And I think at Exhibit 1, tab 46, there's a number of regional documents in the joint document book that I just wanted to take a look at here. So there's tab 69 in Exhibit 21.
Sorry, can you share your screen?
Yep, I'm going to do that. And, oh, this is it. Tab 67. I'm going to share my screen now. Let's give me 1 second. I think there it is. So this is tab 67 from the joint document book. And this is is this the signal policy that somebody was referring to?
Yes.
Right. And I just want to be clear here. Do you know why this document was put in the joint document book? Like, is it relevant to anything you're saying?
It's the York Region signal policy.
It's a York Region signal policy. And so is this the policy that's being applied right now to determine whether or not a signal is warranted?
Yes, to my knowledge, it is. Yes.
Okay. And as I understand it, you see what I've highlighted?
Yes.
Okay. It says unwarranted installation of traffic signals increases overall delay on the major street, right?
Yes.
Now, isn't that exactly what Mr. Mark set out in his letter, which is Exhibit 46? Exhibit 46. 1 second.
It would be helpful to the efficiency of this hearing if it was all organized in advance, if you have these questions for these witnesses, Mr. Streisfield, without having to search and get assistance in searching for all the documents you need.
I'm pretty good at pulling them up one by one.
But it takes
It takes 10
time
minutes.
while you search interminably.
You may not realize it, but it does.
I'm not
And there's a
seeing-
lot of people out here waiting.
Sorry, I'm going to just pull up Exhibit 46. I just hit it. And now I'm screen sharing Exhibit 46. It's not there. It's not there. It's not there. It's not. I don't know why it's not coming up. Then we're gonna. Okay, I'm going to try this again. I'm not seeing Exhibit 46 to bring up to share.
Right. Is there some point to be made comparing the two documents or contradicting the two documents, or where are we going with this one? Not a smiling question.
What I'm saying is that it was already, the evidence was already provided at the previous hearing before Member Conti that a signal was not recommended at that location because it will create an unsafe conditions. It will not be efficient. It will not add significant capacity to the road system. It will add significant delays for road and traffic. And
Mr.
it
Chair,
should, and
you
it
will
could
not find-
compromise the
Question.
operations of the
Question.
busway.
Sir, you will
Mr.
not find,
Streisfield,
you will not find anything that Mr. Streisfield just said in the decision on my client's phase one
Anyway.
application.
I thought so.
is there a question without the interminable preliminaries?
Have you reviewed the Mark engineering letter dated February 19th? Excuse me, February 20th, 2019? That is marked in this proceeding as Exhibit 46.
I briefly looked at it today after you submitted this morning.
Yes?
So I have briefly looked over it.
Okay. So I just want to be clear that the evidence that was tendered in this hearing by virtue of Yonge MCD's witness agreed that those were the conclusions that were put to the tribunal with respect to this signal. In other words, the data had already been collected and undertaken by the engineer, and he came to the conclusion, one more time, that construction of a full movement intersection, and that would be at the location we're talking about, right?
Yes.
Not be pursued because it will create unsafe conditions. It will not be efficient. Do you have any information sitting here today that constructing that intersection, well, which will create a safe condition as opposed to an unsafe condition?
Sorry, I'm just going to clarify your question. Are you asking the conclusion you just drew, what witness gave that evidence?
I'm sorry?
The conclusion you just went through now, you said it was given as an evidence in this hearing. I'm asking you who gave that evidence?
So I put this letter to Ryan Guder,
Okay.
the planner, who confirmed that his transportation case did not support a full moves intersection at that location, NS, no signal. And this Exhibit 46 is his report that was an exhibit in that hearing confirming his opinion. And that, in my view, is already in evidence in this case.
Okay, Mr. Harrington will jump in, but first of all, Mr. Guder did not give transportation planning evidence. He was the land use planner, so it was not his report. I'll let Mr. Harrington speak to the actual hearing since I didn't participate in either did Mr. Wong.
Well, my objection is evidentiary based. You can't use an exhibit from another hearing put in through another witness whose qualifications were not as a transportation witness and call it transportation evidence for purposes of this hearing. That's not the way evidence works. It is entered for the fact that it was an exhibit in another hearing to draw transportation opinion conclusions from that evidence. That is not the way this works. And also Mr. Ryan Guder did not agree to the propositions that Mr. Streisfield is now putting forward to. I'm not sure exactly who he's putting them forward to, because Mr. Wong was not involved in that previous proceeding. So why he would have any evidence to give with respect to Mr. Mark's opinion, I'm not sure. We're at least 2 or 3 levels removed from having relevant admissible evidence being given on this series of questions. So I would ask that the tribunal put a stop to them.
So we have an exhibit.
Next question.
Sorry. Do you have any information as a transportation planner? What impact causing a break in the BRT to put a signal there would cause? Cause or result in? What impact?
I haven't done the analysis.
Thank you. Those are all my questions.
I don't have anything on reexamination.
Thank you.
Well, we have another regional witness, is that correct?
He's here, so I'm in your hands as to, I don't know how long you were intending to go today. We're at 4:37 right now, so we could start him, but he definitely wouldn't be finished today.
Yeah. We were supposed to, according to the schedule, we were supposed to complete at 4:30.
He's in the other room. I'm hoping that he can come in tomorrow morning and get started. So yeah, let me just double check.
On for over an hour or so.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair. Okay.
I've confirmed with him. He's available to start tomorrow morning if the tribunal wishes to break today. And he'll be here first thing in the morning. We can start with finish the region's second witness.
Well, we are doing the 9:30 start tomorrow morning. So, and he's called as a
Transit service planning witness.
okay.
Mr. Chair, it's Mr. Cherniak.
Yes.
Can I ask two procedural questions before we break today? Hopefully they're simple.
Okay. Oh, is that a threat or a promise? Yeah. Okay.
I believe it's a promise. One of my witnesses, Mr. John Lee, would like to give evidence virtually, and I believe he's supposed to be on the 21st or 22nd. Will that be acceptable?
Is there any issue with that?
The usual issue is cross-examination, but Mr. Colburn and I have both been involved in recent hearings where we've had cross on remote, and so it seems to work.
We're in the tribunal's hands. The city is prepared to accommodate the request.
Okay, Mr. Cherniak.
It's acceptable. Oh. It's acceptable, Mr. Cherniak. Sorry. I can't get you, Mr. Cherniak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is that it?
The other thing I was going to ask, so I don't have to ask tomorrow, is that I was not planning to attend Thursday based on the witnesses that are going to be heard, and I just want to confirm that will not be a problem.
No issue?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, 9:30.